Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the webinar on careers in e-commerce presented by Smart On and Pearl Live. We are very fortunate to have with us Ms. Hanisha Vaswani, who is an e-commerce and digital marketing expert, to speak about the topic. Before we go ahead and hand over to Hanisha, I'd just like to lay out a couple of ground rules for the webinar. Uh, If you have any questions regarding careers in e-commerce or about any other topic in e-commerce, please feel free to ask the question to Hanisha. What you can do is there is a little button in everybody's chat window called questions. Please type your questions there and I will ask the question to Hanisha towards the end of the webinar. Hanisha, over to you. Hello, Hanisha.
Thanks, Lakshmi.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. Hello.
Yes,
Am I
Hanisha, we can hear you. Go ahead.
audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks for that introduction. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this webinar. A bit about myself. I've been in the e-commerce and digital and web space for over a decade now, and I've worked with brands such as Make My Trip, Taj Hotels, Sher Khan, Max Life, and so on and so forth, spanning a variety of industries and a variety of roles. So I'm going to give you an overview of how the e-commerce industry in India is looking right now, how it's likely to grow, and what are the potential career paths there. Okay, so not that it requires any definition anymore, but what is e-commerce? Essentially, e-commerce is any kind of buying or selling that happens using electronic means. It doesn't necessarily have to happen on a computer, it could happen on a mobile phone, for instance, but essentially electronically, where the buyer and the seller are not physically proximate to each other, for that matter. We go into the next slide, please. Yeah. So, uh, essentially, practically every one of us must have seen or experienced e-commerce in some way or the other. Probably the most easy example to think of is when we are buying travel, for instance. Uh, the times of standing at a railway counter and buying a ticket are almost on the way out, and most of us tend to buy tickets online. And that's, I mean, while travel was perhaps one of the first categories to go almost entirely online, there are other kinds of things that we increasingly buy online today, right from things like books from Flipkart or clothes from Jabong to putting up classifieds on OLX. These are categories that have seen a very strong shift of sales from the offline world to the online world, by which I mean that people are buying more and more online as opposed to going to a store and trying to buy things. So I mean, you're more likely to buy an air ticket on a website, for instance, whether that's a Make My Trip or whether that's the airline's own website, than to go to a travel agent for that matter. So that's another thing. What's the scope of the growth of this industry, basically? So asking that is kind of a twofold question. The bigger question is how much can sales itself grow in this country? I mean, the point is e-commerce today is considered to be a separate field. It's considered to be a separate field, and because websites are new and mobile phones are new, and hence people are still getting used to the idea of buying on websites or buying via their mobile phones, and that's why it seems to be a growing industry. But if you look at it in the future, this will practically be the primary way to buy, which is why this industry is taking leaps and bounds in its growth. As you can see, it's seeing a 50+% growth year on year in the number of people who buy. I mean, and anecdotally, I'm sure each one of us has experienced this. The fact that an e-commerce company would not come up in a conversation 5 years ago. Like 5 years ago, if you were out there to buy anything at all, I mean, if you were there to buy a shirt, for instance, nobody would recommend that you go to a website. Today they do. I mean, similarly for furnishings, people are buying sofas online, people are buying electronics online, people are always buying books and travel online, but now more and more different categories are growing, and we are essentially seeing a continuing growth of upwards of 50% each year. That's partly because there are more and more people on the internet now, and in another part, it's also that people are more and more comfortable buying things online, and hence the scope of growth in this sector is immense. If you could move on to the next slide. Yeah. So, like I said, it's essentially moving on from a sector to being essentially a way of life. E-commerce has changed the way people buy. I mean, like I was giving the example of buying a train ticket online. I mean, today nobody. Buying a train ticket offline has become the lesser known behavior, or the lesser preferred behavior, because of various factors. Because of the fact that buying offline in certain categories where you know what you're getting is so cumbersome. I mean, who would want to go to a train station, stand in a line, and then book? And all the heat, all the dust, all the travel, all the fuss for what? And whereas you can just sit in the comfort of your house and buy online the same thing, and what you pay as a service fee is perhaps much lesser than what you would have spent reaching the railway booking counter in the first place. So definitely e-commerce, the ease of use has changed the buying behavior in customers, and that's only going to grow, which is why, because it's becoming a way of life, the industry is almost becoming all pervasive. Like we mentioned, I mean, as of June 2014, Google's numbers say that there are over 240 million internet users in the country, which is very close to the number of internet users in the US, which is supposed to be the most advanced market in the world. And by the end of this year, we are well poised to kind of cross that number. And if we continue at this current growth rate, which we are very likely to, India will have 500 million users on the internet in the next 4 years, which is twice the number of users in the US. Just by the numbers alone, if any particular e-commerce company is able to capture even a small percentage of this market, it's a much easier way of doing business than by setting up a physical store, for instance. And which is why it will essentially become a way of life. It's easier for the merchant, it's easier for the consumer. And like I said, that's the when Smarton asked me, what do you think is the future of e-commerce? My one statement was, e-commerce is not going to be a sector very soon. Very soon, e-commerce will be so basic that you'll stop calling it e-commerce separately. It will be the only way, or the primary way, in which business is conducted. In a sense, what we are trying to tell you today is that if we don't acquire e-commerce skills now, when the methods are easier, when the market is still in a growing phase, later on, trying to acquire these skills when the market is already at a mature stage might be too late. These are skills that will not only be good to have, but they will be necessary for survival in the next 5 to 10 years to come. Yeah. If you could move on to the next slide. Yeah, so that's it. I mean, leave 5 to 10 years. What are the career opportunities in e-commerce today? So the numbers are straightforward. There are close to 50,000 jobs, e-commerce jobs are not to date. And the top skills in demand, online merchandising, basically figuring out what kind of things to put on an e-commerce store, online marketing, how to get people to that store, pricing, what to charge so that people buy, supply chain management to figure out how your goods are going to come to you and go onward to your customers, customer service, and overall operations. We'll move on. These are, just to kind of give a caveat here, we're talking specifically about non-technical jobs in e-commerce. This is not technology-related jobs as to related to actually creating a website or a mobile app, for that matter. Yeah, that's it. Why would one choose a career in e-commerce? The key is basically that this is a great industry to be in today, because it gives us a great sense of how the world is moving. It's a fast-paced industry that's ideal for people who are passionate about business, who are creative, and who like trying out new things. That's perhaps one of the key skills that's required at this point of time. because it's not still a terribly well defined industry. The environment is very dynamic. Everything changes. I mean, 5 years ago, not as many people had a smartphone. The only smartphones were Blackberries, which very few people had, and the word app was almost unheard of. Today, almost everybody, every consumer is using a smartphone, and hence the e-commerce company needs to be able to deal with a customer who is a smartphone user. This is what we mean by a dynamic environment. We are saying that the way in which you as an organization, or you as a seller, and your customer will interact on the internet or on the mobile phone will change all the while. But the key is that that's precisely what makes it very exciting. The ability and the opportunity to learn new things all the time while being able to service customers is in completely unheard of ways is precisely what the e-commerce industry offers. So I mean, a profession. Yeah. Okay. So going on to what are the different kinds of opportunities in e-commerce? Like we showed you in the previous slide where we mentioned the Naukri example. There are various kinds of roles that you could have within an e-commerce organization. Uh, what are the various opportunities then? The one of the key opportunities is entrepreneurship, the ability to start something of your own from scratch. I mean, if you have a thought that you want to sell something that's not being sold on the internet as of now, or it's not being sold properly on the internet as of now. I mean, e-commerce is a great way. I mean, it's not being. E-commerce is a great way of connecting you to potential customers wherever they may be in the world, and you can essentially start an entire organization online with very few resources to begin with. It's a great way to start off in a small way and grow fast. Moving on. Uh, so, um, so, yeah, another thing that you could do is what is called product management, which is essentially like being a mini CEO. While an entrepreneur is someone who starts a company, a product manager is someone who essentially owns a particular part of that company, in the sense it owns mentally every part of it's a particular part of that company. So for example, at Make My Trip, product managers are essentially line of business owners, which means that the product manager who looks after the domestic flights business will do everything, right from speaking to all the airlines in order to get the best deals, right down to getting the customer service issues sorted, speaking to customers, getting the website designed, having a say in how the website looks, what the product is, how it's being sold, who it's being sold to, and so on and so forth. It's an overview, it's an overall kind of role, it's an overarching role which looks at one line of business typically within an organization. That's usually how it works. Um, Moving on. Yeah, another key area is fulfillment. I mean, it's great if you can set up an awesome website and take orders from people, but eventually those orders have to be sent to customers, and those customers have to be happy with those orders. So the orders must reach in time. They must reach. I mean, your packets should be in a decent shape. Your delivery people should be polite, so on and so forth, and that entire chain, right from the moment the order is received till the point the order is dispatched and the customer says that he's happy with it, that whole part is called fulfillment. So that's a great place to be as well, because I mean, a lot of times e-commerce businesses tend to concentrate on the easy part, which is setting up a website. Today, setting up a website is not the tough part, because finding techies to do it for you, or finding tools to build a website straight off is still the easier part. The tougher part is, after having built this really cool website, are you able to remind your customers why they came to you in the first place, by giving them exceptional service, by getting their orders to them in time? That's sometimes what differentiates one website from the other. Moving on. Um, yeah, another great example of something that's not very tangible sometimes, but which can literally differentiate one company from the other, is customer service. Sometimes it's a very neglected field, but it's again a great way to make an impact, especially in an e-commerce business. Customer service becomes paramount, because unlike in a normal face-to-face or brick and mortar kind of situation, you don't meet your customer face to face. You don't have the ability to gauge their their interest, their reactions, your entire interaction with them is through an impersonal medium, which is the web or the mobile phone. And hence, customer service becomes even more important. Their ability to believe that you're an organization that cares about them and will do whatever it takes to fulfill their needs and solve their issues is important, and it helps differentiate one company from the other. And that's another very solid career path if you are a people person, especially. Yeah, this is probably one of the most spoken about opportunities in the e-commerce space, the digital marketing opportunity. Uh, while digital marketing can be done and is done for practically all kinds of businesses, it takes a greater value. It it is a greater responsibility for an online business, because it's a very perfect match. I mean, if I were to run an online ad to tell people to go and look at a product in a store, that doesn't have as much of an impact as an online ad that takes people to uh, to an online store, which is why digital marketing is an extremely key component of finding and retaining and reminding your customers that you're there for them, that this is the kind of product you have, and so on and so forth. So this is one of the key things. I mean, because of course eventually customers are the lifeblood of any business, and the ability to bring in your customers and keep your customers and keep your customers engaged is something that marketing does. Whether it's on your website, or whether it's via tools on your website, or whether it's via tools outside your website, such as advertising. Yeah. Here, this is another way. I mean, IT management, the infrastructure that keeps your website running, the website itself, various, I mean, your internet connections, which will ensure that your website is fast, and so on and so forth. Though that's another field that you can look at. Supply chain management. Do you have enough stocks? Are your customers ordering faster than you can deliver? I mean, are you connected to your suppliers? So on and so forth. This is another key area for careers within e-commerce. And of course, design. I mean, this is again another key differentiator between a decent business and a great business. I mean, see, today with a lot of things, one is so uh, short of opportunities or options that often customers will buy from a badly designed site. But once they have an option between a badly designed site and a well designed site, they usually prefer a well designed one. So, for instance, like for the rail tickets example, I keep going back to them, but there's no option. They're probably the biggest e-commerce site in all of Asia. But the point is, if IRCTC was badly designed till a year ago, we had no option. We would still buy our tickets there because there was really not too many more other options. But other websites having come into that space since the last couple of years has reduced the number of people going to IRCTC. That has happened. I mean, and it will happen. If between two websites which are selling clothes, a better design one will see slightly better customer uptake. Yeah. Moving on. Yeah, and of course, then there is overall operations. The ability to take all these separate pieces together and keep them going as one coherent business to have, I mean, including back office things such as finance, admin, overall e-commerce operations, so on and so forth. That's also a very solid career path. A lot of these career paths, by the way, yeah, okay, yeah, I missed one more. So this is probably one of the key things that differentiates an e-commerce business from an offline business. Practically every business likes to rely on data, but online businesses give you the great opportunity to be able to get a lot of data about your customers and to be able to do something with that data. And which is why analytics is also a very key piece in running an e-commerce business. The key is that I mean, because every interaction between a customer and your website is recorded in some way and becomes a data point, looking at that interaction especially in in groups. So for example, if you look at the number of people who came to your homepage and then didn't look at any other thing and just closed your website, um, and vis-a-vis the percentage of that number that did go on to another page, you can get some learnings from things like this. And of course, mature e-commerce businesses look at many more data points than that, and analytics is a specialized field in itself with its own. Merchandising is another key area in which essentially differentiates your entire site because of the product line offered, which is a far more concrete and visible differentiator to have vis-a-vis any other differentiators. Yeah, so essentially going on, I mean, just to kind of recap, what we are trying to say is if uh, an e-commerce business overall is not terribly different from an offline business, or essentially the way business has to be done. I mean, you have to have a product, you have to have a customer, you need to send the product to the customer, that product has to come from a supplier, and these are all basics that need to be handled. The difference being that you no longer see the customer face to face, your interactions are via a different medium, and therefore that medium needs to be understood in order to be able to reach your customer better. And that's what this course is going to teach us. Lakshmi, would you like to take it onward?
Sure. Thank you, Hanisha. Thanks for the great insight into the different career opportunities in e-commerce. I know there are a lot of participants on the webinar, some of those who couldn't join, who've been sending us a lot of questions. So I'll take a couple of minutes to quickly walk the participants through the Pearl Lives digital commerce course and how it will help prepare learners for some of these careers that Hanisha just spoke about. So, the Digital Commerce Program is a 6-month completely online course that is designed both for practitioners and aspiring entrepreneurs in the field of e commerce. Now, some of the key features are: one, it is a module based structure. So, you'll go through 5 modules which are mentioned here: Introduction to Digital Commerce, Going Online, How do you manage an online business, How do you grow your web store, and How do you grow online using marketplaces. These are the 5 modules that the course is split into, and there is no restriction on the time or day for completing these lessons. The course is spread over 6 months, so over 24 weeks. Every learner is expected to spend about 5 to 7 hours in completing the lessons that are allotted for that week. Now, lessons typically consist of either video lectures by instructors such as Hanisha and other practitioners from the industry. They consist of web tutorials, which are audio video content that explain the key concepts, the theory, the latest trends in digital commerce. For instance, there would be a lesson on digital pricing and the different techniques of pricing that have to be used for an online business. The third feature is every learner is assigned a mentor. So even if you're studying online and you're not physically coming to a campus, you will be assigned a mentor or a guide who will be available to you for any questions or clarifications on the subject that you're studying. The fourth and most important feature is the practical part of this course, where along with lessons that you finish every week, you will be given a project to finish that is based on the topic for the week. For instance, in one week, if the lessons that were allotted were about merchandising, the project would be for you to go ahead and add a couple of products to your web store, which you will be doing using Shopify, one of our industry partners. So the key focus of the course is to help you work on projects and thereby help you build a portfolio for you to showcase your skill and competency and knowledge that you've acquired in these 6 months to your potential employers or to your potential customers, depending on which path you're choosing. So it is a very practical course, and there is equal emphasis on the theory that you're learning and the practical part that you'll complete vis-a-vis the projects. And finally, the advantage of uh, doing a course from an academic institution versus a non-academic institution: you will be a part of Pearl Academy. You will be a student of Pearl Academy for all practical purposes. There is a Pearl Connect program that will be conducted at the end of the course, where learners will have an opportunity to physically come to one of the Pearl campuses in the country and participate in a 3-4 day series of presentations, industry networking, and finally a graduation ceremony. So these 6 months would not only help you get a professional certificate in e-commerce, the professional certificate would also come from Pearl Academy and our industry partners, which are listed here, which means it's a recognized, valid academic credential. The courseware partners, as you see here, Pearl Academy has been in the education space for the last 20 years. They run undergraduate and postgraduate programs, diploma programs, and it is their first foray into online education. In fact, this is the first comprehensive e commerce course being offered by an academic education institution in the country. Internet and Mobile Association of India, which is the body for all e-commerce, mobile, and any internet-based companies in the country, they are the industry partner for the course. So they endorse and they stand behind our course. Shopify is one of the world's largest e-commerce platform companies. They're based in Canada and they have more than 1 lakh merchants all across the world in about 75 countries who have opened and who run their e-commerce businesses using their platform. So these are stalwarts in the e-commerce sector, and they are also the industry partner for our courseware. And SmartOn, which is an online education company, is the online education partner for this course. Some of the projects that you'll do as a part of this course, this is just a partial list. In 24 weeks, you would complete anywhere between 15 to 17 projects. So some projects are you would identify a target business model for your e-commerce business. Should you be a B2B business, a B2C business, a C2C business? That's a project work that you would do and submit to your mentors for evaluation. Evaluating technology alternatives to take a build versus rent decision. So there are alternatives. You can go around building your own e-commerce website or rent platforms such as Shopify, or go the social media route and set up a store on Facebook. So which is the right strategy for you and how do you take that decision would be one project that you would work on. Similarly, using Shopify, which is our industry partner, you would set up an end-to-end web store right from setting up your shipping, payment policies, adding and managing products, managing orders, customers, managing digital marketing. So there is a comprehensive list of projects that will help you not just master the theory of e-commerce, but also the practical part of e-commerce. With that, I'll take a pause here and I'll open it up for questions. Some participants who unfortunately couldn't join Hanisha had sent in their questions through email, so I'll just go ahead
Sure,
and ask them. A couple of questions.
sure.
One common question that came in was about how does a fresher get started in this sector? So, somebody who's just finished their graduation in commerce or arts or economics, how do they start and how can they aspire to work for the big e-commerce companies?
Well, to a certain degree, it begins with some sense of introspection. What are you good at? I mean, if you're a fresher, eh, over and above what you've studied, you want to also look at what you're good at. Are you a numbers person? Are you a people person? Do you enjoy speaking to a lot of people? Do you enjoy dabbling in some amount of technology? Do you like numbers, for instance? If you really like numbers and you're able to make sense of data, then analytics could be a sensible field for you, for instance. If you really like people and you're very concerned about their problems and you like to solve problems, customer service could be a strong way of looking at it. Now, if you're very methodical, if you like finishing things, if you're very detail oriented and methodical, then for instance, operations could be one of the things for you. Even fulfillment could be one of the things for you. So sometimes it's also a matter of not looking at your degree and looking at what kind of person you are and what kind of work you'd enjoy. That's always a solid way to start. And of course, you should also look at what additional skills your degree has already given you. So for eco people who data analytics is a dead simple choice to go in for, at least to begin with. They could, of course, then grow into, say, something like marketing if they're a little creatively inclined as well. But those two would be the starting points. Look at your degree and look at what you like doing, I think. And how do you get working with some of these people? Uh, very often summer placements are a good way of, at least, I mean, especially if you're a student who's still in college, fortunately, getting a summer placement with an organization is a legitimate and easy way of at least looking around an organization for about 2 to 3 months and seeing the various kinds of roles that exist and seeing what you like. Alternatively, like said earlier, entrepreneurship in e-commerce is not that tough either. So sometimes e-com companies value you even if you started something of your own, even if it was small, if you have some learnings from that. So maybe one of the answers is also to start something of your own, build a small e-store, get a loyal customer base going, have some learnings from there. How did you get those customers? How many of those customers kept coming back? So on and so forth. Then take those learnings to a larger company and join them if you still feel like you want to. Otherwise, if your small store has already grown to a larger one, you don't need to join a larger store. You already have built one. So that's an easier way to go. One of the other ways to probably hack this route is to have an MBA from a premier institution. That also helps because a lot of these organizations tend to hire from reputed organizations. So that's another way. But like I said, I'm more of a do-it-yourself person, so I prefer the way where you've done your thing and you're able to go to a larger organization with a set of learnings saying, I tried building a store which was selling, say, selling handicrafts online or whatever, wooden toys. It was selling wooden toys online. We spent 5 months building the whole supply chain, the logistics, the customer base, and this is where we are. This is what our sales are, and I'd now like to join a larger setup to learn more. That's a great way of going through it as well.
That's a very interesting observation, Hanisha, because also given the how young the sector is, e-commerce sector, there is a lot of appreciation for people who have, like you said, been there, done that, and not somebody who just comes with theoretical knowledge and just a great attitude to be trained. So even if
Yeah, I
somebody,
think. Yeah, go on.
yeah, even if somebody has actually gone ahead and just done something on their own, I'm sure the companies in this sector value that experience that much more.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, I mean, a lot of the skills that we're talking about are also skills that will need constant refreshing, that will need, because something or the other is changing all the time, and you need to be on top of all of them. And of course, these are skills that are acquired online, they're perfected online. So these are all skills that you can sit and learn with the help of the right training, with the help of the right tools. So it's just
Great.
a matter of then showing how well you've implemented that learning.
Sure. I have a question from Sahil who wants to know. Now, Sahil has been in the BPO sector for the last 3 years. He works in Bangalore and he wants to know if I want to make a shift to e commerce, how do I make that shift and can I make that shift because I come from the BPO sector?
Sure. So Sahil, hi. First of all, that's a great question. And like I mentioned, I mean, I think I cannot speak warmly enough about how important, say, the customer service sector is. For somebody coming from a BPO background, this would probably be the lowest hanging fruit. It's probably the easiest way to get into an e-commerce organization and study it inside out. I mean, a role that allows almost every e-commerce company today uses a BPO to take their calls, for instance, or help out with customer service issues, or so on and so forth. I mean, whether those are outbound calls or inbound calls. And while usually these things are outsourced, there's always a quality team internally that's overseeing the whole customer service angle. So the graduation from a BPO type role to a quality role in the customer service kind of field is probably one of the easiest graduations to make, because all you're moving from the agency side to the client side in a sense, where earlier you were taking calls on behalf of a brand and now you'll be employed by that brand. and you do have an understanding because of having dealt with so many customers over so many years. You already have an understanding of the triggers that work well for a customer, the kind of answers that work well with customers, the kind of answers that don't work well with customers, and you can bring that learning into an organization that's probably still struggling with customer service issues. So perhaps the easiest organization to gun for in this kind of a case would be one where you've perhaps interacted with a brand as a customer before and you've seen that they have issues, or for example you think they're okay but they could be much better if they dealt with their customers much better, because you have with 3 years of listening to people, you have this wide vast experience of literally what they need, what their needs are, what their aspirations are, what their fears are, what they're afraid of, so they've bought something, they're really afraid of a brand that's essentially going to disappear. So just by being a brand that's going to listen to them, be around for them, respond to them, a brand can be so much better than its competing brands, and that's a learning you can bring to an e-commerce brand. That's something you can do.
Great. Now, that's a great answer, Hanisha. I have another question from Rajni, who says she is an MBA marketing student and she has already done a summer placement with a large e-commerce company in Delhi, and now she's almost got a pre-placement offer from them. She wants to know if, after working with them for 2 to 3 years, can she aspire for international opportunities with e-commerce companies? Can she work outside of India?
That's a great question. Thanks, Rajni. So, see, I honestly telling you, I don't see why not, because the internet is essentially the internet, right? It works anywhere in the world. So a lot of the learnings can be applied anywhere in the world. What may not be easily transferable from one country to the other is customer behavior knowledge. So perhaps an Indian customer is happier sending a missed call to a brand so that the brand can call them back, but a US customer is happy calling a call center. So customer behaviors or intricacies of customer behaviors may vary from country to country. But fortunately, what this business also teaches us is the ability to learn, the ability to keep probing your customers at all times. Because even within India, for instance, the customer behavior is not going to stay static. You're going to be learning on a day to day basis your data, basis your interactions with the customer as to how they're going to change. And on a day-to-day basis, how websites are built, how you interact with people, how you interact with your suppliers, with your customers, with your employees, will continue to change in the way the world evolves. So, but the fact is that this business allows you to learn. This business trains you to learn in a sense. I mean, anecdotally, a lot of my colleagues from 2, 3 years ago are not in India anymore. They are in APAC positions, regional level positions. India is a very strong market to begin with because of the peculiar challenges. At the very least, you will find it very easy to graduate to another developing market, for instance, which is another mobile first market. It might be a slightly difficult game to move to a very first world market like an America or a UK. But that said, it's not impossible. That's what I would say.
Okay, I think that's very, very encouraging, and I'm sure Rajni would be happy to hear that answer. There's another question from Karishma, and she says, Hanisha, she wants to know her uncle, who's about 50 years old, has always been extremely passionate about doing something on his own. He recently retired, and she's been helping him actually set up his own little Facebook store. So she wants to know,
Okay.
is this the right age for him to aspire to get into e-commerce, or has he already crossed that limit?
Uh, well, I'd like to think that it's never too late. It's never too late. It may. I'm though at the same time, the only question, perhaps counter question I'd like to ask in that case is, or something that you should ask yourself is the comfort with technology. So often enough in today's day and age, running an e-commerce store basis existing tools such as Shopify, for instance, is not that tough. And especially if it's a Facebook store, uh, you know the tools to run that store are readily available, and without much customization, or rather without any customization at all, also you can get to a decent level of business. So the question to ask yourself in that case is, are you comfortable using a computer? Are you comfortable using a mobile phone? And if you're not, can you get in one other person, for instance, who is probably younger, who probably wants to do this kind of thing day in and day out, and can help out? See, because almost any business is not a one person game. It can start out being a one person thing. But if it's any kind of viable business, over time you grow with, you add on people. So it's only perhaps a matter of growing it to the point where you can add on that one person who can take on the more technology facing angle that might be a deterrent to an older person. I'm still not saying that it's a deterrent to older people. I know enough 50 plus year olds who are very comfortable with technology. So it, to a certain extent, if you're asking that it's a comfort with technology, it can be learned or it can be outsourced. What cannot be learned or outsourced sometimes is the ability to do business. And at that age, you have the experience. What would sell? How is the best? What is the best way to sell? And those are definitely learnings you can bring to an e-commerce kind of scenario.
Great. So, Hanisha, we have
Okay.
one more question, and after this, we'll take the last question. So, this question is
Sure.
from, I think it's from Manish. And Manish wants to know, he says, I don't have any maths background, but yet I see that analytics has a lot of opportunities and they also earn a lot of money. So, how can I enter that sector with no background in mathematics at all?
Well, Manish, the good part is that there are so few good analytics people that your degree is somewhat incidental even today. Maybe 10 years down the line, when the world is full of analytics people, it will also matter what degree you have. Today, it really matters as to how good you are. So, actually, with analytics, that also is a field where you can do a lot on your own. You set up a website of your own. You can use free tools to set it up. You let that website gather some data in terms, publicize it in some way so that people can, or people come to it, so you have some traffic data to look at, and then you keep looking at that data and inferring things out of the data. See, the key with analytics is not so much mathematics or statistics as it is being able to establish causality, in the sense that I have a website where 100 people came to the first page, but only 10 people went to the second page. Why does that happen? Is that just, I mean, it's not just a mathematics answer, right? It is, to a certain extent, they are mathematics answers saying, okay, 10% of people went from page 1 to page 2, 2% of people went from page 2 to page 3, and hence the this is the funnel, this is the conversion rate. But the mathematics that we are talking about sometimes is as basic as division and percentages. It could begin with just that. What you need to do beyond that is the ability to look at the larger picture and assign reasons. Why is it that 100 people came to this page, but only 10 people went forward to the other page where I wanted them to go? And that's where mathematics doesn't need to come in, and that's where you can practically come in from any background and do well. So I really do. I mean, there is definitely deeper areas of statistics which will help you if you want to go further in analytics, but those can be learned as you go along. The beginnings are not much more than your 12th standard mathematics. Really, it's a matter of continuing to look at numbers, website traffic numbers, customer behavior numbers on a day-to-day basis, and inferring reasons from them. So, for example, in the example that I gave of 100 people coming to page 1 and 10 going to page 2, the very simple reason, which has nothing to do with mathematics, could be the fact that the product on page 2 is so overpriced, nobody wants to go even look at it. That's not a mathematics reason at all. Sometimes analytics has to go beyond numbers. It has to look at the, so you get my point. You have to be numbers focused, but you also have to be able to correlate it to what's happening in the real business, to be able to take both parts of the picture and go together, and that doesn't require a degree in mathematics really. And for the rest, there are advanced degrees. I'm sure this course is teaching what you need to begin with, definitely.
That's a very encouraging response, Hanisha. And I think one of the great features about this sector also is its openness to embrace people who come from all walks of life. if they demonstrate the right set of competencies and attitude, and have a little bit of, with some amount of training, they can go ahead and take those roles. So that's something which is very encouraging for people with any kind of a background wanting to aspire and enter into the sector and look at different kinds of roles. So
Sure.
we'll
I
take
mean,
the last.
just to give you an example, some of the best digital marketers I know have no marketing degrees. Some of the best people who make websites I know have no engineering degrees. Engineers do good marketing. I know a CA who does fabulous digital marketing. I know an engineer who does fabulous digital marketing. I know a BA, a Bachelor of Arts who makes fabulous websites. So sometimes what you do and what you're good at has nothing to do with what degree you got. So, I mean, it's probably time, especially in this sector, to kind of leave your degree behind for what it stands for and kind of take it down to one level to say, okay, what did it teach you to be good at? Did it teach you to be good at analyzing things? Did it teach you to be good at speaking to people? Did it teach you to be good at, you know, embracing change, for instance? Yeah,
Yeah, that's great. So, Hanisha, we'll take one last question, and this is coming from Krishna. Krishna says he's been helping clients get enter the e-commerce space by building websites for them. So he's a web
sure.
designer who's helped 5 or 6 companies actually set up their e-commerce sites. And now
Oh,
he
great.
started getting requests from them to also manage their site operations. So they want him to
Okay.
add products, they want him to keep the product catalog updated, troubleshoot.
Hmm.
And he now feels a little overwhelmed with these requests and wants to know, is there a viable business opportunity in managing the operations for all of these different clients that I've been working with? So he wants to really split his business into two, one which will focus on design and the second on customer operations.
Well, I would say there's definitely a very viable business opportunity because, I mean, look at it from just the repeat. I mean, that e-commerce business is your customer. They got a website built from you. That was a one-time activity. You probably then get paid by them again only if they have a change to make to the website or they want to revamp their website or something like that. But whereas new products can go up all the time, and that's a day-to-day business activity for which you can continue to charge them, and you can continue. This can be a very viable business opportunity for you on a day-to-day basis. So you move from more of a projects kind of a metaphor to a retainership kind of thing, where you're essentially doing some steady work for the same client again and again every month. And of course, it exists because no website, I mean, it's not even as if they would ask you to do this for 1 month and they wouldn't ask you to do it for another month, because almost no website sticks to the same product catalog and the same product portfolio many months in a row. They'll always keep changing product portfolios, so this will be an activity they will need to do again and again. So it will be repeat business for you, and it will be continuing repeat business. It definitely makes a lot of sense.
So Krishna, we hope you got your answer, and hopefully we will see some great news from you on your business front. Hanisha, thank you very much for talking to our participants and sharing your insights and expertise about careers in the sector, and also clarifying questions about the different aspects of careers that students can expect in the e-commerce sector. To all our participants, thank you very much for participating in this webinar. If you have any questions about the program or the course, please feel free to write to us at info@pearllife.com, and we will be in touch with you individually. Anisha, thank you very much for your time again.
Most welcome. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye bye, everyone.